finally, after more than a year, it looks like there's a light at the end of the tunnel and the pandemic is finally winding down. But there's another pandemic on the horizon. It's a pandemic of loneliness. We'll talk to a leading national expert next on The Jeff Crilley Show.
Many are predicting that the worst is yet to come, which is unfortunate, said one person here. Until now, they've enjoyed the reputation of being the nation's icebox.
Watched a burglar in his home this morning by webcam.
As a journalist of over 25 years, stories are what make my world turn.
Reporting live from the Dallas newsroom tonight, Jeff Crilley, Fox 4 News.
But in 2008, I took the jump from my familiar life and started a PR firm from my home.
We're talking about anyone with a camcorder like the one I'm using becomes a television network.
We started slowly growing the company, and we now have over 100 clients, and we've branched into the world of live digital broadcasting. I now own 8 different TV studios and have a huge team, and the stories that I now get to share are sometimes the most important of my life. Life has a funny way of coming around full circle. This is The Jeff Crilley Show.
Well, anyone who knows me knows I'm an eternal optimist. I'm not just that glass half full guy. I'm the guy who believes you can get a bigger glass and a bigger pitcher and just fill up your glass anytime you want. But at the beginning of the pandemic, our offices got shut down and I had to stay away from people. I was in my home, and I remember for the first time in my adult life feeling bouts of loneliness and depression. And my wife said, "You're not yourself, you're in a funk." And I realized, man, if that happens to a guy like me who is always the sun is shining, imagine what happens to somebody who's already suffering issues of depression. To talk about that now, a leading national expert, Dr. Sharon Livingston, also my friend. Thank you for coming on my show, Dr. Sharon.
Jeff, I'm delighted, and thank you for having me. Yeah, this pandemic of loneliness actually has been going on for a long time. We are communal species. We need to be with other people. And for whatever reason that we are separated from others, which has obviously been exacerbated during COVID, it makes people very uncomfortable. They become stressed, they become anxious, they become depressed. And it's a normal thing. The first thing to do when you do feel that kind of loneliness and anxiety and depression around it is to avoid blaming yourself. One of the things that happens is we decide, I must have done something wrong. It's my fault. It's my fault I'm alone. It's my fault that I'm here with my wife and I still feel lonely. What's wrong with me? I shouldn't feel that. So the first thing to do is to avoid blaming yourself for it, because that kind of feeling is one that is normal, and that just like any other pain reaction that we get, it's one which tells us something is wrong. We need to do something about it for our survival and for our ability to thrive in the world. Does that make sense?
It does, and frankly, I'm kind of worried about our society, and especially our kids. Will we all suffer some version of PTSD in the coming years because we were all traumatized by this year where we're all forced to wear masks and separate and not even hug, grandma?
Oh my gosh. There is research that suggests that everybody needs 8 hugs a day. And so some people think hugs is kind of, a little bit too touchy-feely, silly sounding, but the reality is we need to have that physical contact. It does something really important to our whole nervous system to make us feel whole, to make us feel able, to make us feel excited about life. And when we don't have that kind of touch, we kind of get depressed and we move away. That's one of the reasons why having pets is so important. If you don't have some key people in your life, you need that touch. And yes, PTSD is a really good way of thinking about it, because I think we've all been traumatized by this, and that kind of stays in our memory system, and anything that reminds us of it will create anxiety, and that can also lead to depression. So they're very related in that way. I think you probably know this, Jeff, because so getting to know you over the last few years, I know you know a lot. Anxiety is a learned response. And what happens is that we have a fear response to an imminent danger. But we learn from that. And the smarter you are, the more likely you are to feel anxiety because you see the clues and the signals of something that could be dangerous. And so that creates the same kind of feeling. It's an expectation, whether it's true or not, that there is a threat that's going to hurt us. And so we start feeling the same kind of fear we would feel if there was an actual danger right in front of us. And the more you have those kinds of reactions, the more that you have those kinds of experiences, the more likely you are to feel anxious or you are to turn it. Depression is anger turned inwards. And that's why it's so important to avoid blaming yourself.
Well,
Because, go ahead.
Sharon, you're a very gifted public speaker. In fact, you did a TED Talk a couple years ago that went viral. I want to play just a clip from that.
It's really funny to be introduced as a fun, intense, but fun with this topic is kind of fun. So I want to start out by telling you a story. So Joe is walking down the street one morning, and all of a sudden, crash! Glass is raining down on him. Ouch! Blood. Oh my God. He compresses it, and he rushes back home. And by the time he gets home, the blood is dry, and the pain in his head is subsiding, still a little bit there, but enough that he forgets it. I mean, he's tough, he forgets about it for 25 years. 25 years. And then he starts having these horrendous headaches and vertigo, and he's feeling horrible. And he can't walk. He has to go to the doctor. And so he goes to the doctor, and the doctor examines him, and he brings him back into his office, and he says, "So, Joe, when did it happen? When did what happen? When did you get shot?" He says, "Shot?" He says, "Joe, you have a bullet in your head." And believe it or not, there are many stories of people walking around with bullets in their head that they're not even aware of. And so he thinks about it, and he remembers that day with the glass raining down on him. He's like amazed. And the doctor does surgery to remove the bullet. And with any kind of healing process, there's inflammation and pain, but he gets over it. He has a little scar left, but wow, he's back to functioning. He's back in the world. And so why am I telling you about Joe? Because living in a toxic friendship is like taking a bullet to your head.
Wow, so powerful. And to just extend that metaphor, we've all had glass raining down on our heads for the last year. So we probably have wounds that you just can't see. Talk more about loneliness.
So what COVID has done is forced us into isolation. They talk about AI as in terms of learning, but I think AI could also stand for artificial isolation, and that's what COVID has done. It's artificially made us go back into our own space and be with ourselves, and a lot of us really would prefer not to. And as I mentioned before, because of the kinds of beings we are, we need contact. And now the contact we get, like, thank God for this, Jeff, that I can see you on Zoom. I mean, it's fantastic, right? But on the other hand, I can't touch you. I can't feel the heat of your body. I can't feel your handshake. And that is so critical for people to feel good about themselves. And so we have all kinds of reactions: wearing the mask, not wearing the mask, keeping social distance. It feels unnatural and uncomfortable. When you walk out in the hallway in your apartment building, people might look at you weirdly, like, are you wearing a mask at all? Are you wearing the right mask? Are you dangerous? Are you going to hurt me? Should I report you? We've become so anxious and fearful of other people. How are we going to get over that when we've had a year or more now of constant threat to our needs for other people?
Yes,
So,
absolutely. And I know that you like to go out socially and dance, and there was probably some months there where you weren't able to do that. Did you suffer from the pandemic yourself, just emotionally?
well, I'm a a very extroverted kind of people. I really like to, need to be around others. And I have a significant other that I live with. But, you know, he's upstairs in his office, I'm downstairs in mine, and we get together. But I'm used to being around lots of people all the time. And so it was kind of a strain. I had to get used to it. It was anxiety producing. And I had to learn how to take care of myself the way that I've asked others to take care of themselves.
Yes. Now,
And
you also wrote an article that we're going to put on the screen right now, The Pandemic of Loneliness. Can you summarize that for us?
so, in summary, we have gone through many changes over the years that have been exacerbated by COVID. And the changes have been we've gone from being nuclear families to everyone going out, living on the internet. Uh, I mean, just think about how work is being done now. People are doing work from their homes on their computers, and while they're connecting through Zoom and other video conferencing uh, programs, it's still not the same as being in a group, as going to a party and bumping elbows with someone, feeling the energy, all the energy that's in the room. Recently there's been research about how plants send energy out to other plants. And I have one of my clients is an herbalist and a plant expert. Well, humans do that too. And when we're not in the presence of that energy, of that way of communicating, and I don't mean it in a spiritual way, although some people might talk about that. I just mean the fact that we are energetic bodies, that our bodies are electrical. We create energy, and that touches other people. When you don't have that, there's a void. And so we have to create that to feel whole again. And it makes people feel sad. I mean, when you wear a mask, I have to ask you this. When you wear a mask, do you see as well? Do you hear as well? Because I don't.
Me
I
too.
honestly don't.
Absolutely, yeah. I cannot wait until the vaccine gets rolled out across the country and we can get rid of these masks. I understand
They're
why
awful.
we wear them, but yeah, you feel claustrophobic in a mask. You have been helping people since as far back as you can remember. Tell everybody the story about how when you first realized you had this gift.
When I first realized I had the gift. Well, even as a little girl, like I was my mother's confidant, and I would just listen, and I'd be wide-eyed. She was telling me about things she was going through, and then she would feel better, and we would go on. And I didn't really think about that. But when I got into high school, I became the confidant of all my friends, and what they would do is they would tell me what they were suffering with, and I was a really good listener, and I would just nod and commiserate with them. Sometimes I'd offer a suggestion about something. I'd remind them how terrific they were, and then they would feel better. And even when I was doing marketing research in the very beginning of my career for Warner Lambert before it was Pfizer, people would come into my office not to talk about market research, but to tell me about their struggles. I would get into an elevator and walk out with a story. I've always been that kind of person. And I'm chatty here with you now, Jeff, but in my life in general, I'm the listener. And there's something about someone holding your story, listening to your story, that helps people feel better. So I've been doing that for a long time.
Well, tell me about your practice now, because you're having to see everybody remotely, and you're a touch person. Is it the same? Are you able to help heal the same way you would if you were in person?
So it's been a very interesting journey. I don't know if you know this or not, but I started out my career a lot on the phone and, learning how to do therapy on the phone. What happens is that you start to see through your ears. You can hear things that let you know that something's happening. You can hear the hesitation. You can hear the distraction, like they're going off and doing something else. And even though it wasn't my preferred mode, I learned a lot about how to do that. With Zoom, you can see people's expressions, and while it's not the same as being able to pat them on the back or hold their hand or be in the same room exactly, it's a blessing. It's a blessing that we've had that. I think it's saved many people's lives. Being able to get onto I'm calling it Zoom, which has become right the generic now for video conferencing. But when you're able to be on a video with another person, with your family, people sharing Thanksgiving dinner at their desk with other people around the country, around the world, it helps us to feel more connected. And so while it's not quite the same as someone walking into my office, there is a connection that happens that makes it possible. So I run online groups on stress and anxiety and loneliness through Meetup. I put it on Meetup and have people come. And I do a lot of sessions by Zoom or on the phone. Sometimes one of the wonderful things one can do for depression and anxiety is to move. Movement is key because it burns off those stress hormones that make us uncomfortable. And so there are times when my client and I, when I'm doing a one-on-one, are walking together. So we'll be walking and talking, and that walking helps them to release some of those upsetting feelings and talk about them without as much anxiety or sadness around it.
Well, you're a very kind person. I remember how you and I first met. I was feeling under the weather, and you instantly went into healer mode and taught me all about lysine. I still use it today. It's a powerful immunity supplement. But talk about your practice and how does somebody know when they need a Dr. Sharon in their life?
I think that if you're feeling lonely, if you're feeling anxious, or you're feeling depressed in a way that stops you from performing what you need to perform in your everyday life, if you're crying a lot, if you can't get your things done, if you're having trouble in your relationships, why not talk to someone and get some support? We're meant to be with other people. We're meant to get support. And the most wonderful thing that I see in this, in my stress and anxiety groups, is that the people who come, and they come regularly, start helping other people, because when you're fed, you're able to feed others. It's like we learn how to support each other by being supported. There was a Beatles song that I heard a line in many years ago, and I don't remember what the real words are. The love you take is equal to the love you make.
Yes.
And I heard it, and it was like a huge aha to me. The love you make is equal to the love you take. You first have to be fed before you can feed others. That's my belief.
Wow. Wow. This has been such a powerful interview. Thank you for sharing your gifts with the world. We're gonna end with your website so people can get in touch. SharonLivingstonPhD.com is the website. Dr. Sharon, thank you for being my friend, and thank you for sharing your wisdom with the world.
Thank you, Jeff. It's a pleasure.
You bet. And that's it for now. We'll see you next time.
Okay.